these machines have lasted for 30 years. Clearly, they are made to last. They are good quality stuff. Like I can buy it, and hopefully, it can last me a few more good years. The time is always terrible. It's either like super early my time or super late my time. Part of me was like, I can dismiss the, oh, it's too complicated to use because I don't care. Track your progress in NesTrisChamps, record your games, and because you do it for yourself, I expect you spend some amount of time to have a clean setup. I never expected that NesTrisChamps would be used at CTWC, so I'm very, it's like I'm putting this probably on my resume from now on, right? It's like,
when I talked to Yobi, I didn't know that Yobi really wants to stay anonymous and like an unknown member in our community. NesTrisChamp wasn't really designed to be a big software like what is now used in CTWC and Classic Tetris League. It was for his personal use and to track his score and his journey towards a max out. Hi, my name is Frank, also known as SirMaser. Welcome to the Pizza Fantasy Podcast. It's a premiere. Like, the first Asian community member is now on PDP. It took 39 episodes. That's really long. And it's also something new for me because I recorded this episode at 9:30 in the morning instead of the usual 10 p.m. In the evening, because most of the guests are Americans. Yobi and I talked about NesTrisChamps, his journey towards the max out, playing in Singapore, and can you get a setup, an NES Tetris setup in Singapore? Well, this and more in this episode of the PDP. Hope you enjoy it, and this is our conversation. Yobi, welcome to the Pizza Fantasy Podcast. Thanks so much for doing this.
hey, thanks for having me.
Hey, first question is always the same question to everyone who's new on a podcast, and that is, how did you get into NES Tetris?
I mean, I'm old enough to be there when NES Tetris came out, so I remember playing at my friend's place. I don't know, long ago in the 80s. I was always into Tetris after that. I mean, I think Tetris is perfect game, is awesome. So, but mostly I was on SNES, Super Tetris 2 and Super Tetris 3 for a long time. And I only got back into classic NES Tetris after I saw online the Joseph versus Jonas final from 2018, I think.
Yeah, the second buzz that the community got after the Tetris Boom for Jeff video.
I had not seen the Boom Tetris for Jeff video. I had no idea there was a classic Tetris community out there.
Oh.
But when I saw the final video on YouTube, I was like, okay, this is amazing. So I want to go back to this. And I think part of it was also, this is amazing, and I thought I was good at Tetris. Looking at this guy, I was like, okay, I'm clearly not good at Tetris. but I'm like, I think I can do this. And so I figured that I would try to be there. I think at the time, at the time there was like less than 100 people that had maxed out. I can make at least I can make the top 100 maybe, which I didn't, by the way. And I'm still not sure it can happen.
Far off from max out. I think PB is currently in the 600s, I believe.
777 right now.
777, yeah. So, well, it's a decent way to go to a max out, but one lucky game you're in the 900s.
The luck has not been very good.
So you played NES Tetris in the 80s when it came out. So how big was the hype for Tetris when it came out on the NES?
I mean, I don't recall there was a lot of hype. My neighbor had NES, but it was mostly playing Super Mario. I don't think he had Tetris. So this was at a friend of mine's place. And for him, I think this was the one game that he had for a long time. So every time we'd go to his house, it was just he and I and maybe a couple of other friends, and we would just play this. And I don't think we were particularly good, or we didn't know how far the game could go. But we also we didn't think of starting at higher level. We thought that the purpose of the game was you start at level 0 and then you play for as long as you can and score as
Oh
much as
boy.
you can.
Yeah. That was like little tournaments that you and your friends did?
Nah, not at all. It was just for fun.
Okay. And do you remember your high score back in the day?
No, it couldn't have been very good. Because I think, in fact, like, I mean, I wasn't at this friend's place all that often, but every time we
Yeah.
were at his place, we would definitely be playing a lot. At the time, I think where Tetris was big was on the Game Boy as well. So I had a couple of
Yeah.
other friends who were playing on that, but none of us were really tracking our scores. I think we were
Okay.
just loving the game for the game itself.
Yeah. And did you play any other iteration of Tetris after that?
Yeah, so I think I didn't have a NES myself. I had a Sega Master System. I moved to Super Nintendo. On this, I had Super Tetris 2 and Super Tetris 3. And on Super
Yeah.
Tetris 2, there is this variant called Bombliss. So me and my friend played that a lot. In fact, I used to love Bombliss.
Yeah.
But when we moved to Super Tetris 3, they had a modification of Bombliss called Sparkliss, which I thought was not as good, but I think the fluidity of the Super Tetris T3 Tetris was great.
Yeah.
So as we got used to that, when I moved back to Super Tetris 2 and Bombliss, the controls just don't feel very nice anymore.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I get that. It's like
Mhm.
if you compare it to I'm a big Zelda fan, and if I played the modern Zelda games, Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, and then move back to Ocarina of Time, the controls feel very different and very awkward.
Yeah, so I don't play it, and I find that the Bombly stuff. Well, when my friend and I we were comfortable with it and we were having a good time. If I
Yeah.
try to show it to anybody at the moment, they just don't understand. They don't understand the rule of getting large explosions or the
Yeah.
Tetris with gravity. They feel it's weird. So I don't even show it to people anymore. Like if when I try to set up Tetris at my office, maybe on a gaming station, it would be Super Tetris 3.
Yeah.
I think Super Tetris 3 is really the good middle ground. It doesn't have as many, I would call them the cheating modern mechanics, like multiple piece previews or like extremely long delays or things like that. But
Yeah.
it still have full randomizations. It has dash that is almost instantaneous. So I think it's like it hits the sweet spot.
Is it a game that you like to go back to?
Oh yeah. Um, Although I haven't played it for a while. Another thing that they did in Super Tetris 3 versus NES Classic Tetris is they fixed the transition at 180 lines. So if
Oh,
you start at level 18, you get 180
yeah.
lines, which means that every time I play, I can pretty much hit max out. And I was like, yeah, this is awesome. So when I get too frustrated by the NES Classic Tetris and not making any progress, I was like, okay,
Yeah.
screw this. I'm just gonna get a max out on Super Tetris 3 and I'll be happy.
How often did you play NES Tetris, like in the 90s and in the zeros?
Almost not at all. Yeah. I mean, this friend of mine, I think it was secondary school. I forgot. So like at some point we just diverged. We went to different places,
Yeah.
and I didn't see it for a long time. So still didn't have any else. I wasn't playing. I wasn't playing in the 2000s, even 2010s. Like I say, like I only really started again uh, after 2018 or
Yeah.
2019. Yeah. After, yeah.
So you saw the finals between Jonas and Joseph, and you were like, "Oh, this is so cool! I want to get
Yeah.
back into NES Tetris because I remember this when I was a kid." So how did you get back? Did you bought original hardware? Did you start on an emulator?
I started on emulator. So I mean, I've been in retro games. I've been a retro game enthusiast for some time, so I always have Raspberry Pis lying around and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And NES is easy to emulate. So I was just playing with this on a LCD screens, and it was fine. I think, especially if you play at the lower level, whether it's level 9, 12, or 15,
Yeah.
even if there is a bit of lag, it doesn't matter. Like at this stage, I think it was clear that even the learning to stack was just terrible. So it was more important to learn to stack than to have the perfect times.
Yeah.
But yeah, at some point, I think there was some frustrations. I forgot if the emulator was laggy or the TV was laggy or something was wrong or a USB controller was laggy. It just didn't feel right. And it didn't feel right from me remembering it playing from the 80s. So at
Yeah.
some point, I took the plunge. Okay, let's just buy a CRT. Let's buy NES. Let's buy everything old school. Make it work.
Yeah. So you currently live in Singapore. Back in 2018, you also lived in Singapore?
Yeah, correct. I've been here
Yeah.
for 25 years.
Oh, yeah. So how hard is it to get an NES into Singapore?
Not too difficult. So the CRT screens, there are still quite a lot of second hands going around, so it's easy to find. The NES, I think it can be found from retro game enthusiasts. Like you don't get that. There is no such thing as a garage sale where you will find it accidentally. So typically, it's people who either sell it because they have a retro gaming business themselves, or they import it. So it can be a little bit expensive. Which is why initially it took a while to decide, like, do I really want to do this? It's not like it's a huge investment, but I think I paid at the time maybe almost $200 and that's maybe 150 or 160 US dollars.
Oh, yeah.
So that was non-negligible.
Yeah, it's like the same that I paid for my NTSC NES, like $150, $160 just to import it from the United States.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is fine. I figured, these machines have lasted for 30 years. Clearly, they are made to last. They are good quality stuff. Like I can buy it, and hopefully, it can last me a few more good years.
Yeah, and otherwise, there are perfect clone consoles now for the NES.
Yeah, I bought a few as well. I think the perfect clone console are good because they have dual output, either the good old RCA or the HDMI. And for capture, I think HDMI is just cleaner, digital out all the way.
Yeah. For playing, I liked RCA. less delay. So, what was the learning curve when you start playing on an emulator and then transferred it to original hardware?
I think because I was there early enough, it was not too difficult. I feel there was less accidents on input, or whether it was due to the lag or something else. But because I bought the systems early enough, it's not like I had really fine-tuned my skill on the emulator and I had to adjust them. So it's just like, okay, we switch the system and it's fine. Yeah, so no, it was reasonably easy, I think.
Oh yeah, and so I saw your match history, and you pretty much only played in Singapore only events, Singapore live events. You played one online match. Why is the reason that you like that you only play in Singapore events? That seems logical. But is there a reason why you don't play a lot or only play one online event or one match?
I think I used to. Maybe there's like multiple answers to this. I probably a little bit antisocial, so I'm not like really big into the community.
Yeah.
I mean, when it's local with people I already know, I think it's fine. But I think when I decided to restart on NES Tetris, I figured that I want to get that goal of max out. So it was a personal goal. I didn't have a goal of like being the best or anything like that. And so doing competition was not high in my list of priorities. In addition to that, so being in Singapore, I'm 12 hours ahead from New York, so Eastern time, and like 15 hours ahead from Western time, or I don't know how you call this, West Coast time. And so Pacific time. The time is always terrible. It's either like super early my time or super late my time. And I know some Asian player managed to do this, like whether it's Nenu or Alan Bot, but every time when I see this, I cannot. And I think this is one more reason I'm not. It's difficult to enter the community. Like by the time I wake up, once in a while I go to the CTM Discord forum and there is like discussion that have been going on overnight, and I have like 500 messages to catch up, and I cannot. And so I just don't do it. So like once in a while I'd go in and see if there's anything interesting. But most of the time it's very hard to participate in these conversations.
So we'll talk about the NesTrisChamps, but how hard is it then? You're the creator of NesTrisChamps. That if there are difficulties with NTC, that they need your help, and they're like, okay, but now you're awake, and when you're and then they are asleep, and when you're asleep, they are awake.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. So that's the thing. Also, I don't know if people actually experience problems and they feel stuck and they feel, oh, I wish Yobi was there. Okay. When I wake up, it's not like somebody is screaming, like, "Hey, Yobi, please come help." I think one thing that has been extremely helpful is Yeehaw in the US was an early adopter of NesTrisChamps, and I think he's an expert on how the system works, and so he has helped a lot of people get started. But all this is invisible to me. I do not like people don't tell me. By the way, I helped so and so because he had this problem. But once in a while, if there is very specific problem that get bubbled up to the NesTrisChamps Discord server.
Yeah.
But actually, I don't really know. And from my perspective, I mean, the way I use NesTrisChamps, it just works. So I always like, if I don't hear anything, I hope it just works for other people. I know that's not true because people are always complaining about it. But yeah, I don't know what the exact problems, or if there is really like a alert or like something really wrong in the middle of the night. I don't know.
Is it a choice by design that you are a little bit out of the community then?
I think that if the time zones was better, I'd probably be more involved, maybe a little bit. But yeah, so that's why it was a two-part answer earlier. I'm still a little bit, okay, antisocial is not the right term, but like I see a lot of people very hyped about lots of things, and for me, like, look, I met NesTrisChamps because I wanted it for myself. But it was easy to open up for other people, so I did that. But I have my personal goal of max out. Clearly, there's no way I would get into the very high level players, and I have no intention, no interest even. So yeah.
So what is the origin for NesTrisChamp then?
At the very beginning, I knew early on that as an old game, NES Classic Tetris stats were terrible. I mean, all we have from the game are the piece counts, right?
Yeah.
Which doesn't tell you anything. I knew early on as well because since the first match I was exposed to was Jonas Joseph, I knew of the competition between Das versus Hypertapper. Hypertappers, right? And okay, Das is what I used to play. Except I didn't know that it was called Das, and I didn't know the complexity of how it worked, or I didn't know how to maintain it, or what were the exact rules. So this I could find out early on. Yeah, exactly. I mean, you get a sense for it. That it's like sometimes your piece moves fast, and you get some intuition of it, but it's not the precise mechanics of how it works. And so, but I knew that this was still the way I was playing. Like, clearly, I was not seeing myself trying to hyper tap at like 12 hertz. There was no way. I'm too old for this already. But so I was like, okay, so clearly I want to do Das, and if I see Jonas playing, in my head I was thinking, you know what, if I can be as good as Jonas with Das, and I clearly can get maxed out easily, maybe not every single game, but almost there. It's like, this is the level I want to have. So I need to know how well I'm managing my Das. There was no Tetris Gym at the time, but there was a very early ROM hacking ROM called Das Trainer. From Just 81, and so I got that. But again, there was no what the NES can provide is instant feedback on the current game. There is no tracking of progress over time. And I know some people would track their scores, and I wanted to say, well, can I track my average DAS for a game? But that was not even provided. So I needed to be able to read the screen. At the time, so I was looking around. I was like, okay, for sure, some people would have done screen recognition systems. I mean, NES is like 30 old games. I was convinced there would be people who would have done it. Surprisingly, very few actually. So it's not as common as I thought. But I did find the project NesTrisChamps, which is made by Zeal, which is a dev and player from Australia. And so he was basically managing to record I think it was score level piece preview, and that was it. And so I was just using that. So
Yeah.
I was able to read it, and I could redraw. I could easily redraw my own things, get the data from this, and make my own little render for it.
Yeah.
So the setup, my earlier setups were a little bit dirty. It was part of the OBS screen was the Tetris field. Then
Yeah.
I was having some of the data that I could read from Nestris OCR shown and redrawn on the screen around it. Then my webcam on the side.
Yeah.
But just that was letting me track game progress. So I could track my DAS, I could track my score early on. Actually, I mean, Nestris OCR wasn't tracking DAS trainer fields. Like, in a DAS trainer, you can see your current DAS value and the DAS value that the piece had when it spawned. So obviously you
Yeah.
want it to be as high as possible to show that you have not lost your DAS.
Yeah.
So I contributed to Nestris OCR a couple of times. I want to be able to support DAS trainer ROM, and Zil was always very supportive. He was teaching me a whole bunch of things. He accepted my code contribution into the system.
Yeah.
And so so I could have this, and I think I could, based on that, I could start have some interesting rendering thing. I could show the DAS going up or down, or I could show the average DAS that I had for a particular game, and I could start tracking these things.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So if Jasteve and Xeal didn't contribute to their respective ROM hacks, was it something that you could do yourself, or did you needed those ROM hacks to start your own project?
I mean, I'm a programmer myself. I think if I really were trying to start from scratch, I could probably do it from scratch. But if I knew nothing about doing video captures and ROM hacking on the NES, and I think it's very likely that I would have just given up. It's like, okay, I don't know what to do. This looks too daunting. Forget it. So the fact that this project existed and I could initially just use them and tune them and modify them for what I wanted was it was a lot easier to get started.
Yeah. So it was a personal project of yours, but so how did you evolve NesTrisChamps then from the early beginning?
So I think there was multiple cycles. So that very high key setup that I had, I realized that doing the rendering from the video feed looked kind of bad compared to some of the other stats I had managed to redraw. I was like, I should also redraw the field.
Yeah.
And I knew it was possible, right? Because clearly, even in 2018, Trey and Trey Vision had already made full HD rendering of games. So I was like, well, this looks absolutely gorgeous, right? I can redo this. I think Nestris OCR at the time did not support reading the entire field. So Zil and I worked, I forgot exactly already, but basically we managed to add support for reading the entire field in Nestris OCR. And so once I had the field, I had everything. And I could, just like Trey Vision, I could redraw everything.
Yeah.
And so now I had a very crisp rendering. I refined what I was showing of the gameplay and the stats. So I was showing the running Tetris rate to see how well is the Tetris rate going in a particular game.
Yeah.
I was able to draw out of the field whether, do I have a clean slope from left to right? Do I have a double well? Am I Tetris ready? And I could show all of these things. And I think the UI looked pretty cool.
Yeah.
And so as I was streaming once in a while for this, people were coming in and like, oh, this looks cool. Can I use it? And I was like, yeah. I mean, he's using Nestris OCR and he's using my own rendering, which is, at the time I called it Nestris Stats UI because I didn't have NesTrisChamps as a full end-to-end server. My stuff was only redrawing data that Nestris OCR was sending.
Yeah.
Right. So they just set up Nestris Stats UI and you can do it. And I thought it was quite easy to do, but it was actually rather complicated. To run Nestris OCR, you need to install Python, you need to figure out how to run it. Then you need to, even doing the stats UI and the renders I had was not completely straightforward, using a browser source in OBS and things like that. And so people would try, most people would just give up. But still, they would come to my stream and say, hey, can I use it? Can I use it? So yeah, you can do that. And I think Zil really wanted to make Nestris OCR something extremely simple to use. Like you maybe with a one-click installer, so you don't have to install Python. It becomes like an app, and it's super simple. But it's not like it's very, very complicated, but it takes a lot of time and effort to do this.
Yeah.
While I'm a web developer, and I figured, you know what, people are already online and in Chrome or Firefox all the time when they access Twitch or whatever. So
Yeah.
if I can make this fully browser based, then we would have the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
And so I decided to port NesTris OCR, all of the capability of capturing the video input and parsing it onto the web. And so now I said, like, well, it's not NesTris Stats UI anymore. It's a completely different system, and I had to name it.
Yeah.
I think what I was doing this just around that same period, I think Trey released Maxoutclub. So clearly he had the exact same idea. Like we need to put some of this stuff online. It just makes
Yeah.
it easier for people when it's online. But still, in my mind, I didn't mean this to be a nice product or anything. I just wanted it to make it easier. And as long as it was working for me, that was my own goal, my only
Yeah.
goal. So
So
I was yeah.
so you didn't really care about how it looked. Only just it needs to work and it needs to process all the data and needs to give all the right outputs and all that. So if it looks terrible,
That's right.
it is what it is. But I just want my screen. I want everything that I want to know, and that's it.
That's right.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, the only thing that I knew I needed to make look good were the renderer themselves, right? By the time you have your stream data, your gameplay,
Yeah.
it needs to look good when you put it in on your stream. So the renderer were always kind of looking kind of nice, I think.
Yeah.
But from the stats perspective, I mean, we are capturing a whole bunch of things. We're capturing the piece stats, we're capturing the score, and so for each of these, like I was basically trying to find the area, but everything was manual adjustment. And from my perspective, it was okay. He's like, yeah, sure, you might spend like 5 minutes to do it one time, but because I'm remembering your calibration settings, you don't have to do it again after that, and it's fine. But even that, I think I overestimating how much effort, or underestimated how much effort people were willing to spend to do this calibration. So I think it was way too painful for people. And so I don't know, over several iterations, I added something that made it a little bit easier to do. So like for the P stats, for example, because they are 7 counter, and they are supposedly linked, at least in their position on the X position. So like if you modify one, they all change at the same time now. So it's things like that to make it a little bit easier.
But that's all those changes are based on feedback from people that use it.
Yeah. And initially, I think when people were giving me this feedback, as like part of me was saying, look, this is the tool I built for myself. It works well enough for me. And if you want to use it, it's easy to use. You'll need to install anything. You can use it on your browser. So part of me was like, I can dismiss it's too complicated to use because I don't care.
Yeah.
But I think when I see people struggling a little bit, or when they ask for help, it creates this virtuous cycle of like, okay, fine, I'll do this to help you. And so, over many iterations, just feature were starting to be added onto the system.
Yeah.
And so the next evolution, I think, was the realization that once I had the system and I could say, well, I convert the game video feed into game data and I can redraw it, it's only logical to go to the next step of what CTWC had done before with Stray Vision. We say, well, if I have one data stream, then I can just combine with another data stream, and now I can run the two stream side by side and give you competition head-to-head statistics, like score differentials and things like that.
Yeah.
And so I think that was a nice the next thing I put in.
Was that a difficult thing to do? Like, I think getting one stream up and running, like rendering all the data and make sure that it's good, it's sometimes difficult, but getting two streams linked, also speaking to each other, like score-wise, what's the score difference, what's the Tetris difference and all that. Was it a difficult job to do, or was it rather easy?
No, once all the pieces were in place, it was very easy. I mean, so it was very easy within a particular context, right? You could say, well, NesTrisChamps as a server could be aware of a match. But actually, my stuff is not really aware of a match. I'm just saying, the only thing NesTrisChamps on the server side does is say, well, if I own the room where people are connected and sending their game data, I can say, well, okay, so SirMaser is going to be player 1, Yobi is player 2, and so now these two data streams are going to the renderer. The renderer, he can redraw exactly as I was doing before when it was one game, so each of them are drawing on their own side.
Yeah.
And at any point in time, I say, well, what's the score of player 1 is X, the score of player 2 is Y, and you just compute the difference.
Oh,
But
yeah.
there is no understanding of a match or when it starts or when it ends. It doesn't matter. All it cares about what are the scores right now, and I show the difference.
Oh, okay.
And in fact, this is well, I thought that was good enough. I mean, if you're just doing this at home, like this was all during COVID, right? Like you're doing this at home, you want to have a quick rendering of a game. If you're a game
Yeah.
host, this should be good enough, and you can manage the synchronization of game start with Twitch counter and things like that already
Yeah.
existed. But right now, I think I'm hearing from King that they're saying that like a stronger concept of a match is desired. Like you want to be able to see, well, there is a countdown. The player need to be able to see each other. This did not exist in my system because in my initial system, you send your data, it goes to the renderer that's owned by the game host, but it
Yeah.
doesn't go back to you. And now he said, no, it has to go back to the player. They have to be able to see it. Or if there is a player that would do and after the game is over, they decide to go for PB. So one of the player waits.
Yeah.
We have to be able to hit. I mean, maybe the player just want to play a game. Just to warm up or to practice a bit as he's waiting for the other one to get his PB. But at the moment, the way the renderer works in NesTrisChamps, because the score differential is always real time.
Yeah.
If you start a new game after you are dead, then the score differential is gonna be updated again. And I think like the guy said, well, this is not acceptable. As an admin of a room, I have to be able to control that. Yes, I tell you when the game starts.
Yeah.
Once the person die, until both players are dead, and I say we are ready for the next game. Like I don't want you to update the game anymore. So if
Yeah.
someone plays a game, their score, whatever data they are sending, should not affect the display.
Yeah.
And so I get that, and I probably do it at some point. But these are concepts like so. I have the admin need to be able to tell like yes, the game is about to start. The
Yeah.
game has not ended yet. So stop when it's ready. Because when you need to put this, if you were to build in any modern Tetris, is you cannot just start a game until the other player is done. But with NES
Yeah.
Tetris, people are completely independent,
Yeah.
and we need to put this control in the hands of the admins. Then I need to make the UI either I shove buttons all over the place to be able to let them click what they want to do, but the UI becomes messy. Then I have to start thinking, okay, I need to do some UX design. And initially there was like almost zero button in NesTrisChamps. It was extremely straightforward and simple. And now all of these things are adding complexity. And I've been adding them kind of dirtily. I'm just like slapping button into the UI. But at some point I know I have to put some thought and do it cleanly.
Yeah. So it's I hear that I feel like that it started as a personal project and now it becomes like a community thing. Like people expecting more of NesTrisChamps.
I guess so. So the list of stuff from what I was mentioning, I added the countdown. I mean, just this week, right? Earlier in the week, I added the countdown, and this was something that King requested.
Yeah.
I think part of this was driven by so Trey retired from CTWC last year, and so I think people don't know whether he will continue to be in the Tetris community and continue to support Maxoutclub. I think Maxoutclub has been very successful. Like a lot of the community, whether have been using it, whether it was the classic Tetris lead or Sharky's events. But so yes, so if Maxoutclub is not maintained anymore and Trey says I don't want to support this anymore, then people are looking for alternative. And NesTrisChamps is there, but I think it's not as polished as the way they were using Maxoutclub. Or they say, well, can we do this? Can we do that? Can we have these features? And sure, I mean, at this point, it's no longer things that are my needs. I mean, I'm not even a game host. I don't run my own tournaments, or like you said earlier, I don't participate in tournaments myself.
Yeah.
But yeah, if people like it and if I can help them by putting the features in, then I'll do it.
Yeah. So for a long time, Maxoutclub from Trey Harrison and yours, NesTrisChamps, they run side by side, and Maxoutclub was the more popular one. Was it like, okay, did you talk to Trey about how could we, how do you this, how do you that? Did Trey talk to you from, okay, I have this problem, can you help me with that?
No, actually, I think I've only talked to Trey once before, which one when I was asking him what the code for what was this? The mind meld Game Genie code. So But as far as NesTrisChamps and Trevision or Maxoutclub, I never communicated at all.
Yeah.
Partly because NesTrisChamps was my own project, and I didn't want to be to say, oh, it's just a copy of Maxoutclub. So in fact, it's like when Maxoutclub was launched, I went in and registered and I used it just to see. But then at some point, like, actually, I shouldn't use it at all. So like nobody can say that the way I build NesTrisChamps is like like copying feature or like ripping
Yeah.
feature. Yeah, maybe that was not super smart. I could have contributed differently. But I don't know. I think I felt like this was a toy project from my side. Well, clearly I had seen CTWC that looks extremely polished. Everything was beautiful for a long time. In my mind, Trey was a pro basically, right? Well, I'm just like this joker doing this side project for my own fun. I was like, I don't want to waste time. But yeah, eventually I think like from a pure feature parity perspective, it's about the same more or less, except mine is just a bit more messy to use, I suppose.
Pizza Pennies Podcast is now on Discord. Go to bit.ly/PDP Discord to join the official Pizza Pennies Podcast Discord server. Talk with me, talk with other community members about PDP 24/7. You'll find all the podcasts that has ever been released and all social media content and shorts and whatever. Everything PDP is on there. Go to bit.ly/PDP Discord. We will return to the conversation, but first, we moved home from YouTube. We are now on the Classic Tetris Monthly YouTube channel, where all our episodes will be available at full length. Join the Classic Tetris Monthly Discord server. Go to ctm.gg/discord to join the server and participate in one of our monthly tournaments and join the biggest Classic Tetris Discord server. If you have a suggestion we need to have on the next Pizza Pennies Podcast, let us know through the socials or on the Discord. Pizza Pennies Podcast is also available on Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts, or your favorite podcast app. There is also a Peace Dependency YouTube channel. On this channel, you'll see podcast highlights, mini documentaries, and other NES Tetris related topic videos. You can follow us on the socials at Peace Dependency, and we are active on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Now, let's go back to the conversation. So, you said Trey retired from CTWC, so he took Trevision with him. He couldn't use it anymore. So at what point did Vince or someone else from CTWC came to you like, okay, can we use NesTrisChamps for CTWC?
I forgot when it was, but let me correct one thing. I don't think Trey says I'm retiring, I'm taking Trevision out. I think early on, from what Vince told me anyway, he said, you know what, I give you the server, I give you the computer that runs Trevision, you just use it on your own. But I think from Vince's perspective, this was if there is no technical expert that can manage it, if the thing works, it's great. But if something doesn't work, then what do you do?
Yeah.
And so from his perspective, I think he wanted to have, I need to have the tech support of someone who knows the system in and out, and if something goes wrong, they can jump in and do whatever is needed to make things work again.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think Vince reached out to me. I forgot when, early last year, maybe in March or April, to ask me if I was coming to CTWC. And my immediate answer is very unlikely. I mean, it's a really long trip from Singapore to go to the US. It's like. And it's a long and expensive trip. So I never intended to go there. At the same time, I think CTWC was always on my bucket list. It's like one day I'll go to CTWC, I'll get to meet all these awesome players, and I get to chat with them, and I could say I was there, and I'll do it. So just after he had seeded this idea that, we could use NesTrisChamps and you could come over, I guess I was just thinking about it.
Yeah.
So I was talking about it to my wife, and she knows I can be very indecisive, and she's like, "How about we go together? So we make it like a couple holiday.
Yeah.
And you go take care of this. I'll participate, or I'll do a bit of tourism in Portland or whatever. And the timing was good too, because my kids are 16 now, and at 16 years old, so we've never left them alone. But at 16 years old, like actually, it's fine. They can survive 1 week at home on their own. It's not that difficult, So yeah, everything worked together, and so I told Vince, okay, you know what, I'll do it. I'll come over, and let's use NesTrisChamps.
Yeah.
I think it needed a little bit of convincing as well because so Vince wanted to do a test run. So he's running the Phoenix event, and he's like,
Yeah.
well, even if you cannot come, if we wanted to use NesTrisChamps, are we able to do an initial setup with you remotely? You tell me what I need to do, tell me what I need to buy, tell me what I need to run,
Yeah.
and let's see if we can use NesTrisChamps for one local event. See if it works.
Yeah.
And we did that. So Vince and I had like a couple of calls, sometime very early for him or me, or either way. And they ran the Phoenix event, and I think it just worked. So like, yay. So he was convinced that yeah, I think that can work. Even if Yobi is not there, it could work, and if Yobi is there, then for sure it's gonna work. And
Hmm.
so that's it. That's how I got involved.
And for CTWC, did you change some things did you change something to NesTrisChamps, or did you just brought the product that it currently was?
It was almost 100% as it is online. The one thing I did is I made sure that I could run it locally from a Raspberry Pi. So I had to make sure that I knew exactly what packages to run and put some guides out there. Another thing that I do in NesTrisChamps is when you have a competition layout, you can brand some of it. Like you can set a logo inside the curtain. So after you die, your curtain falls down.
Yeah.
By default, it shows a NesTrisChamps logo, but I know people would want to put their own logos in there. Then maybe a smaller NesTrisChamps logo for my own branding underneath.
Yeah.
But so the thing is that if you have to restart the server, you have to remember to set the logo again. And I could see that at the Phoenix event, they restarted the server multiple times. Something was not working well. And so they forgot to reset the logo. So I felt bad for them. So
Yeah.
for CTWC, I created a custom renderer where the logo was hard coded to CTWC, so you don't have to think about it. The moment it loads,
Yeah.
it does the thing. Another thing that we did is, for a long time I had this renderer of either you show two matches one on top of the other, so like
Yeah.
4 players at a time, two matches concurrent,
Yeah.
and then you could easily switch to either to zoom on match 1 or zoom on match 2. But so when you show 4 player at CTWC, it's also shown during qualifications, right?
Yeah.
And the qualification is not a match. It's literally 4 people doing their own thing independently,
Yeah.
right? And so I needed to make sure that we like showing the score differential or the number of hearts for wins. This makes no sense at qualification time. So I
True.
modified the CTWC layout to say, well, if you specify there is like a parameter that says qualification equal 1 or something like that, then the score differential goes away, the heart go away. I forgot something else go away, but so it made it easy to be a qualification mode for
Yeah.
NesTrisChamps that didn't exist before.
Oh yeah. So how was it going to CTWC?
I mean, that was great, I guess. I don't know. So it was a very long trip, first of all. I was there for just a week or 6 days even.
Yeah.
So the jet lag is rather intense.
Yeah.
I didn't quite understand. I think Vince has been running this for many years, right? So from his perspective, everything is very clear. I was trying to ask questions about, how is this set up? How do I link what they do on site versus what I should be doing for NesTrisChamps and what I expect to do? And I think it was difficult to really understand. I think Vince couldn't understand what I was not understanding. I didn't know how to ask what I didn't know how to ask because
Yeah.
so that was a bit tricky. There was like I got he put me in touch with some of the guys from the venue itself. So like I was helping to manage the purchase of the internet system, I think, or
Yeah.
the internet connection. And then I worked with Kitaru, Alex Kerr, because we needed to make sure that NesTrisChamps could work with the custom ROM they're using for CTWC.
Yeah.
But it's only when I got there that when I was in the place, I could see what was going on, see how they were setting up, working with Chris Higgins and Chris Bidwell and all the teams. I think that was awesome to meeting all these guys.
Yeah. I think long days, short nights.
Yeah, not that long days. I think it was fine.
So how did you experience CTWC then for not as as Yobi, the person who runs NTC, but like Yobi, the first time going to CTWC?
So I was very happy to be there. I don't think we can really separate both things. So I thought, so Singapore being small, there is no retro gaming exposed at all here.
Yeah.
Like none. So for me going to CTWC, I was like, well, I will both enjoy CTWC, but I will also walk around in the Portland Retro Gaming Expo and see who other people. Like I know there were some YouTubers that I follow. There was the AVGN, the Angry Video Game Nerds, and another guy called Retro Bird. And I said, oh, I'm gonna meet them. I'm gonna see them. It's gonna be great.
Yeah.
But turns out that once you are in CTWC and you organize and you help run the event, everybody is extremely busy all of the time. So like I didn't really have time to walk around or do other stuff. So or like just sit down and just look at the player play. I was sitting next to Pumpy most of the time, while Pumpy was in charge of OBS and the stream views and switching things like this and telling people where to go. I was verifying that NesTrisChamps was okay. There was anything that I should be jumping at. And so I was just like sitting right next to Pumpy most of the time behind the tech table, you might say.
Were there major issues with NesTrisChamps during that weekend?
There were a couple of issues here and there. I think there was a couple of times where the game was not captured, or rather it stopped being captured because it didn't understand the start of the game. So this happened a couple of times. And there's not much you can do. You just refresh and it will start working again, and that should be fine.
Yeah.
Which it did. But when it happened, I think everybody is a little bit worried. We had issues that were not relating to NesTrisChamps, but I'm lumping all the stress together in one. I think on the first day, CT1 had there is a lot of stream disconnect, and it looks like it was purely a bandwidth issue. Our output bandwidth was too high, and either the venue or Twitch or both were not happy with it. So on the second day, we reduced the outbound bandwidth, and it was a lot more stable after that.
Yeah.
On day 2, this one was like the big stupidity on my side is by right with NesTrisChamps, like I said earlier, once you do your calibration, everything is remembered. Yeah. So when you come in the next day and you restart, or if you're a streamer, you use NesTrisChamps, you restart it, everything is fine. So from my perspective, in the morning, the next day, when you say, well, we switch on everything again, I just need to verify that the cameras are captured. And it's like, yep, it looks fine. I did not play a game on every single station on the second day. Yeah. And because I assumed that everything like we did on day 1 would work, and I remember the settings should work also. But for CT2 specifically, for some reason, which I still don't know why, but the player were inverted. The game streams were captured flipped. Yeah. And so, but because I didn't do a test game, they only realized this when the first game of the day started. And initially I jumped, I forgot who the player were, to be honest. But so I jumped in and I tried to do a quick recalibration or reassessment. But because both player was flipped, I think Vince jumped in as well and he said, look, since there is a technical difficulty, we void this game, we're going to restart. So let Yobi finish the reset up and then you'll be fine. But I felt terrible because if I had like done one test game in the morning, then I would have noticed it right away. What's interesting? Sorry.
You didn't make the same mistake for day 3. You started playing on all.
Oh yes. Like for day 3, we checked everything. Yeah. I think what's interesting is on a normal cartridge when we switch things up, there is always the demo, the demo game that play, right? Yeah. And so we would have seen if the games were out of things. Like, wait a minute, this game is not playing on the correct screen, so we can flip it. But the custom cartridge from day 2 onwards, there is no demo game.
Yeah.
So basically we switch it on, but now we're just waiting for the players to start.
Yeah. So are you using multiple, you sit on at the tech area, but is it one laptop that you use for every stream station, or are you using multiple laptops and it's connecting to one computer?
So there is NesTrisChamps server runs on a Raspberry Pi, and for the capture we were doing one laptop for 2 players. Yeah. So once you connect NesTrisChamps, we would capture on every laptop. We would capture 2 NES video streams and 2 webcam streams. So
Yeah.
4 USB input for this four data set, and all of this. So they would be sending 2 players to the NesTrisChamps server.
Yeah. So, and is it difficult then to know which laptop is for which station, or did you track it down easily?
Oh no, it was easy because the layout of the room. So for CT1, it's basically like CT1 and CT2 is one very long table. So the 8 players are side by side in a strip, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
so we would put one laptop in between the 2 players, and we know that this laptop is capturing these 2 players.
Oh, okay.
Then the connectivity out of the laptop. Then we just needed to make some simple labeling. Is okay. Yes. So this NES input is from player 1, 2, or 3, or whatever.
Yeah.
And the guys were already very well versed with this because they were doing the same thing for the player video input. Chris Higgins, when he was managing this, he had labeled all of the camcorder by player 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and so it was very easy to follow his lead and do the exact same thing for the
Yeah.
NES capture.
So, are you happy overall how CTWC went from your perspective?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think things just worked, and except for the tiny bit that I mentioned earlier, like the thing was running 8 hours a day, no problem. The server didn't have any issue. We didn't have internet issue. Everything worked fine. I think the string looked fantastic, and with everybody working together, like switching between the NesTrisChamps view versus the match cam view or things like that. Pumpy and everybody else was on top of it. Everything was great.
Yeah.
The one thing that I regret is so NesTrisChamps can record the games. It's one of the advantage of it. Like if you use NesTrisChamps as a player, you can
Yeah.
always replay your game and you can see how well you did, and you can review your games basically. But
Yeah.
for CTWC, I was worried whether I wanted to make sure that there was no way NesTrisChamps is using so much resource that it starts like lagging and everything
Yeah.
breaks. So I'm like, you know what? I'm disabling recording. So I did not record the game as game data streams locally. And so mostly it didn't matter. I think for the live stream it doesn't matter. But
Yeah.
if you switch the OBS view from the game just finishes to the like we see a cam view of 2 players,
Yeah.
then we are not capturing the scores. And because I'm not capturing the score on the game that's being recorded, people say, well, what was the final score? And I shit, I don't know.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so I mean, thankfully, I think we had backup mechanisms for this. Every single game, like people were writing down the score of every single game. But
Yeah.
I felt that this should have been into recording into NesTrisChamps anyway. Also, like at some point, I think Vince was asking me whether we can, like when we are showing the games, the 4-player view. He said, "Well, can we replay this game and show them a 2-player view for like maybe a commentator stream later on?"
Yeah.
And actually, I can't do that because I don't have the data unless I recapture it from the smaller view. But NesTrisChamps is not really designed to do that.
Yeah.
So I thought in the end, I think recording things locally would not have been a problem at all. And so
Yeah.
this was just paranoia from my side on whether I can, like, the little Raspberry Pi server can do it. Actually, it would have been no problem, and I should just have done it. So I regretted for that.
So that is a change, one of the changes that you want to make for next year.
Yes.
So what are other changes that you like to make for next year?
So Pumpy gave me a whole list of things that he was hoping to see. Part of it is on the rendering, so what people see.
Yeah.
But also how you interact with the system. Like I was mentioning that the admin view earlier, I've been adding buttons everywhere, and some of these buttons make sense in very specific case. But like when you're in the middle of a live event, you want to be able to see just the thing that matter to you. Like
Yeah.
many of the NesTrisChamps has a lot of options which in a live event you don't need to worry about. And so from Bumpy's perspective, it's in the way. It is distracting. I mean, I'd argue that if you know the system already, if you're already comfortable with NesTrisChamps, then it doesn't matter. You can ignore the button you don't need to worry about and focus on the one you do. But I think if you expect that new people on a live event who haven't used the system before, then they get overwhelmed and they have other things to think about, right? OBS is same thing. OBS, there are controls all over the place. Then there is the live things that are happening. You have to switch between commentator, player, games, things like that. So you want to like reduce your mental overhead. And so I'm thinking of whether I can make a simplified view of the admin page.
Yeah.
Then like this year I've added like NesTrisChamps adds a whole bunch of stats. Like, so, for a long time in CTWC Trivision system, we could see the score differential, but the commentators are always translating this into Tetris diff, right?
Yeah.
And so overall, it's not all that complicated. You like roughly divide by 20k more or less, and then you kind of have a sense as how the score go. But it's not 20k. And doing the division accurately in your head is impossible. So like the commentators are always a little bit off here and there.
Yeah.
So I always thought it makes sense to just say, you know what, why do I ask people to make a division in their head when I can just show them the number? But this was new, right? And people said, well, does this really have value? The Tetris score diff versus the score diff is still the same information. We still know who's ahead. It doesn't really matter. And so whether we should keep it, I think it's up for discussions. Whether the runways make sense, you say, well, how much are you expecting to be getting for level 19 transition, level 29 transition, level 39 superkid screen runway? It's in the what we had in CTWC 23 is it shows once in a while. And I think some people liked it, some people didn't like it. Whether we want to keep it or not, I'm not sure. It's easy to remove either way.
Yeah.
I like thing.
Yeah, I like this. I like the Tetris difference. Like
me too.
I rarely commentate on the Tetris matches anymore. I pretty much only do CTL super streams for openings day. But I like to. I know when someone is 100,000 points ahead or behind, but I like to know how many Tetrises is that. How many Tetrises should the player A make to catch up to player B? Like how many more Tetrises? I think it gives. I know it tells the same thing. Like okay, someone is up 100,000 points or 5 Tetrises, something like that. But it makes it so much simple. Like okay, how many Tetris do you need to score to get that 100,000 points, and or how many more Tetrises do you need to score? And I think it adds value for the commentary team.
Yeah. So I think you're hitting the nail right on the head. So what matters, or rather what is a little bit irritating, in when the commentator try their, they do a little bit of mental calculation and they get it wrong, they will inevitably with people, you're talking crap, you don't know how to math or whatever. But in fact, so the difficulty was always, well, what you see on the stream is what the commentators are looking at. So if you want to give more information to the commentators, then you have to crowd the view for the full stream for other people as well. And actually, this is not necessary. Or rather, in NesTrisChamps, you can easily have the data streams go to 2 different places. Yeah. One for the main stream that everybody sees, and one for a view that the commentator look at that has more information. And so, NesTrisChamps has always been able to do that, but I've never made a commentator view. And so, what I intend to do for CTWC 24 is to have a commentator view. So they will always see the Tetris diff, and then we can decide whether we want to show the Tetris diff to the normal stream or not.
Oh yeah, but then you can. I like that. Like that you make it simple for the viewers, but give as much information as you can to the commentary team, because then you can have the Tetris difference, the 19 transition, or the 19 pace, the 29 pace, the 39 pace. Like give them the information and make it as simple as possible, maybe for the viewers, but that the viewers are like, or that the commentary team can give so much more information that viewers can't see.
Yeah, exactly. So we are going to do that. And so it will mean that people won't even know that it exists because they will not see it, the normal viewers of a stream. But from the commentator's perspective, they will have all the data that they need. They don't have to worry about mental calculation, and they can decide if they want to use some of this data or not. It will be up to them. Yeah,
I mean, I when I try to calculate how many Tetris someone is behind or ahead, I know it's 22,400, 800, something like that. I even don't know the 100 scores, but it's like, okay, it's 22k. Okay, let's do. I always go for 22k, but I have no clue what the Tetris score for 19 is, or 20, or anything beyond. So it's like it's impossible to know.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's what I say. like you could say, well, if you're a professional Tetris commentator, you should know. But I think nobody should be expected to have to be able to do a division by 22,800 on the fly in their head. You know.
Yeah.
So I think I love the idea of giving commentators accurate data, and they use it if they
Yeah.
want. I was about to say one more thing that was a little bit messy during CTWC 23 was the management of the profile cards. So in NesTrisChamps, rather if you're the stream administrator, you can choose to say before the player play, you can
Yeah.
choose to like show a card like who is who, where do they come from, what are their interests, or what's interesting about them, and this needed to have some. I needed to put the information in the database, and this was not. We didn't really have time to do this well, so I think the cards were a little bit messy.
Yeah.
When you register for CTWC, there is the registration form asks you a whole bunch of things, but these fields did not map with the way the NesTrisChamps database was. So like when the competition was ongoing, I was trying to like do a bit of reconciliation of this data to show something that made sense.
Yeah.
It kind of worked, but it was not easy for the stream managers to use. So hopefully we can make this a little bit easier.
Yeah. So are you planning to go to CTWC 24?
No, I cannot. I mean, if it was in Portland at the same date, I might have considered. But now that
Yeah.
we've announced the new the new venue and the change of dates, this was announced after I had already done family holiday plans for June.
Yeah.
So I won't be available.
So, but you're confident enough that the team in LA can run the tournament flawlessly like they did in Phoenix.
I think so. I think it shows like a bit. The guy can definitely do it. And additionally, so we were looking to say, well, can there still be one person responsible for NesTrisChamps? Someone that I can work with ahead of time to say, well, if I do this comment interview, for example, I want to make sure that someone understands, because this would be new, how it runs. And that person has volunteered already. So is Richard Wolf.
Yeah.
Richard Wolf is going to CWC, and he's taking over the NesTrisChamps, I don't know, tech guy hat. So I've met him once already, and I expect I'll be meeting him a lot more before CWC 20.
Yeah, Richard is quite active in the CTL server, like when there is a problem with the calibration for players or calibration for the streamers. It's mostly Yeehaw, and lately it's Richard that's helping a lot.
Good. Yeah. I mean, I think he and I have been in each other's streams once in a while for some time already. Like I think we can count in years even. But like now we will be working together much closer than before.
So one of the bigger online competitions, Classic Tetris League, has started using NesTrisChamps in their online events. Did King tell you beforehand that they were going to use NesTrisChamps, or was it a surprise for you?
I mean, I don't think people told me ahead of time. Okay, Yobi, we are gonna start doing it. So it was a little bit of a surprise, but I think early on, I think King came in and said, okay, by the way, we're going to use it, and we do have. It would be great if some of these extra features were there. Like I think we mentioned earlier about the game start synchronization and countdown. So for me, I thought this was never important. I thought, like, you know what, like there is already the Twitch bot countdown that's there that everybody uses, and this is good enough. So I never bothered to put this into it. But I think from their perspective, it makes it easier for the players to synchronize amongst each other, and it makes it easier for the viewer as well. So this is like, I don't know how to call it. Maybe sophistication of the system that brings it, that makes it better. And so he was telling me that they would like it. So yeah.
So season 23 had a lot of ups and downs with NesTrisChamps, players that couldn't calibrate, matches that were delayed and all that. And is it something that you're like, okay, this is something that's the fault of the players, they should take time to calibrate? Or was it like, okay, some of the fault is also to NesTrisChamps, because maybe in a closed circle, like a live event in Phoenix or CTWC, it's better to manage instead of relying on 2 different internets or 3 different internets for the streamer and the 2 players?
So I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, most of the time the CTL matches I was not even online. So again, I don't know exactly what the problem is when it happens. Um, I do think the way I think the philosophy of NesTrisChamps initially is because it records your game and because it was to track my own progress. It's meant to be a tool for people to use for themselves. So like track your progress in NesTrisChamps, record your games, and because you do it for yourself, I expect you spend some amount of time to have a clean setup.
Yeah.
I think when Niho started to use NesTrisChamps, it was the same thing. He was tracking his own game, so he spent an effort to calibrate correctly. And then because it's for yourself, like spending a minute or two is no problem. I
Yeah.
think where things become a bit trickier is when people say, okay, we're going to use NesTrisChamps for this game. It means like players have to calibrate. And then so now people show up for the competition and they've never done it before, and you could say, well, can you do it in advance and call people, do it well, and do read this documentation, and if you have any trouble, reach out. I think the reality of saying everybody's busy, and so people were just doing their calibration 5 minutes before the match. They had never read the documentation, they don't know what they're supposed to do or not supposed to do, and so for this you could say, well, if they don't know, isn't NesTrisChamps supposed to like tell them exactly what they need to do when they do it?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you could argue it this way, yes. Um, uh, but yeah, I think it's not quite the philosophy of asking people to use NesTrisChamps is not the way I was initially envisioning it. I was like, people use NesTrisChamps for themselves, and if you so happen that two people are together, say, hey, shall we have a match? Then all the tools to just display, because you've done a clean calibration, your game data is clean, then your
Yeah.
game data is clean, and we can immediately have a high quality match and rendering from it. So I don't know. In the future, like I think someone was telling me that they didn't realize that. No, actually, Richard told me like the fact that the interface is long and vertical. People didn't realize that they had to scroll down to calibrate some of the bits that were below because it was not immediately visible that they even exist.
Yeah.
And it never occurred to me that someone would not do that, like scroll around and see what they have to do. I think he was telling me that someone did not calibrate their next box at all. And so if you don't calibrate their next box, then obviously the piece preview doesn't show up correctly, and the drought counter are never correct either. I mean, so yes, it's like, who do you blame? I cannot help not blaming the users a little bit, but I know how it is. It's like if you're making a product, you can never blame your users. At the end of the day, the user journey is on the product creator to fix. It's like I never considered NesTrisChamps to be a product. Again, it's like the stuff that I do for myself and just make it available for people to use. And if more competition use it, I think people would say, well, actually, it is a product. And in fact, it's a shitty product because it's so difficult to use. So, if you want to make it a real product, then you should, make it nice. But, it's not like I'm making any money of this. The Tetris community is tiny. Nobody's going to pay for this stuff. So everything I do to make it nice is on my time. And so my time is the limiting factor at the end of the day.
Yeah. So is it what you can call something that's got out of control? Like it started as a personal project and it snowballed into a big project now that CTWC wants to use it. Classic Tetris League is using it, and maybe in the future more Tetris organizations are going to use it.
I mean, yeah, I suppose so. I never expected that NesTrisChamps would be used at CTWC. So it's like I'm putting this probably on my resume from now on, right? It's like they made a system that was used in an international competition. But yeah, I mean, the thing is, like we discussed earlier, I'm not very, very much into the community, and so at the end of the day, if people have requirement for NesTrisChamps and I'm not able to deliver fast enough, actually, it's not sustainable, right? Like at some point, you'd hope that somebody else have a better, nicer system, and in fact, I can say, okay, maybe let's again, NesTrisChamps is not a product. Someone made a better product. I wouldn't feel upset. I don't think like, oh no, we have to use NesTrisChamps. NesTrisChamps is a standard now. No, if someone makes a better system and they are able to dedicate more time and effort to this, by all means, they should do this. Like for the Classic Tetris Europe, I think they made a completely custom system. And like someone came to the NesTrisChamps server because they were asking how I was deriving the and pay statistics. And so it was, like, well, this is the formula I use, and you a look at the source. This is on GitHub, blah blah blah. But
Yeah.
so if their stuff works great and it's portable and it's super easy to use, I mean, yes, go. Or or Ansel, right? Ansel is making Tetris Fish, and I think like if you have to parse a game to derive, game insights,
Yeah.
he would do everything that constitute the baseline of NesTrisChamps, and maybe he can make it into a nicer product with nicer UI or calibration or whatever. And if he does that, then absolutely, like please use it. He's on US time, and he seems to be a lot more motivated than me to push things quickly. So that might be better.
It feels like you are praying for someone to make a better product than NesTrisChamps, so you can go back into anonymity, like be an anonymous person who runs their NesTrisChamp for their own personal use.
I think part of me thinks like that. Yeah, it's like, I mentioned earlier, the only goal I really had was to hit that max out, right? But
Yeah.
so there is no two way about it. You must like grind it and practice, and get there, right? And all the times I put into making the NesTrisChamps is time I am not practicing my Tetris. So, and I think I don't know. So I made this NesTrisChamps open source early on, right? And part of it
Yeah.
was like, well, so if anybody wants to take it forward, they can.
Yeah.
And in principle, it still happens, but in practice, there has been very little people who contributed into NesTrisChamps. So at the end of the day, like when people have new requirements or things like that, most of the time it's, hey, can you make NesTrisChamp do this or NesTrisChamp do that? It's not, hey, Yobi, I wanted NesTrisChamp to do this, so here is a pull request of code that does it. Do you want to take it in, or do you have any feedback? Should I change something before you put it in? This very seldom happen. Last year it did happen a bit. So there was this person, Zoha Sadar. He was working on different way of capturing data. Don't know if you've seen some of this discussion. He was managing to get. He's been working with Keir Java on Tetris Gym ROM itself to make modification to Tetris Gym, and he was able to make Tetris Gym interact with EverDrive Pro. So if you connect your EverDrive Pro via USB, you don't need to do any OCR. The data goes straight from the EverDrive into NesTrisChamps. And so yeah, he contributed a whole bunch of code to that. That was awesome. This is what I use now. I don't even do OCR anymore.
Man, yeah. So how much time can you devote to playing Tetris and getting that goal of a max out?
It depends on maybe 3-4 hours a week. I have a rather stressful job, so it depends if I have the mind to say yes, okay, I need to relax, and Tetris is what I could do.
Yeah.
So it depends. Like sometimes I do like 2-3 hours in one go because I really need to like not think about work at all.
Yeah.
Sometimes I go like multiple days or weeks without playing at all. So it's very inconsistent. I find that it's also a little bit depressing. Well, for a long time I thought I was good at Tetris. Like I said earlier, it turns out I am absolutely not good at Tetris.
Yeah.
And I find that no matter how much I practice, I still do all of the stupid thing of early shifts, or like there are moves, like adjustment that I just don't see. You know, I may see them when I review, but as I'm playing them, like it doesn't occur to me. In fact, you mentioned when we were discussing earlier, like what was different between playing classic Tetris or Super Nintendo Tetris and going back to classic Tetris, like so late.
Yeah.
So in 2018, I was 40 plus already. Yeah, I was already over 40. A lot of the stuff that I was playing Tetris as were wrong, so you had to unlearn some of the move that you do, and it's very hard.
Yeah.
So yeah, till now, yeah. Go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
What are the things that you needed to unlearn?
It's like I tend to always give myself the too wide wells. It's like so that I have LJ dependencies. For some reason, I always give that to myself.
Yeah.
Especially on the left side. I also don't know why. It's like I assume that the J piece is always gonna come for some reason. It's a very bad assumption to make. This is one more thing. Like in visualization in NesTrisChamps, one of my early renderer, I think, was useful because we always think about counting drops. It's like, okay, I only need to know when there is no eyepiece and there is a drop. So drops are terrible. But actually, all PCs have droughts, and they have droughts all of the time.
Yeah.
And so you can have this rendering view where you can see how many droughts for each category of piece you're getting. And you can see, for in this particular game, for some reason I was J dependent, and it's like I was in like 50 J piece drought. Crap, this can happen.
But you notice that less because the J piece is, I don't want to say it's less important, but the long bar, it's the most important piece of the game because it makes you the Tetris.
That's right. That's the thing. I mean, I think like as long as my board is clean, I can be reasonably efficient. But the moment I start to have holes and I have to start using all of the pieces efficiently to burn and like reduce my holes and go back to a clean state, this is when all of these other pieces and knowledge on how to best utilize them is useful. And I think initially, this is, I guess, one gap with NesTrisChamps, right? So NesTrisChamps, like, initially I was doing it because I needed to track my progress learning DAS, and DAS was my limiting factor. But eventually, once you get your DAS sorted out more or less, what's more important in learning how to stack? And I never really put in effort into NesTrisChamps to say, well, can NesTrisChamps helps you learn how to stack? And I think this is where Tetris Fish and Ansel came in. Is like, okay, so learning DAS control, actually nobody cares because most people don't even use DAS anymore. They just use hypertapper or rolling. The top level player, maybe top level player.
Yeah.
So from their perspective, there is a lot more value in a tool that helps you learn how to stack than helps you learn to control your DAS.
Yeah.
And so I think early on, or maybe not early on, but I did add into NesTrisChamps the capability when you go into a replay, you can ask StackRabbit, what would you have done on this particular piece? So it would show you where the placement he think would be the best. But it's not super convenient. And it's not really. It's like a side feature. While Tetris Fish has this as its primary feature, I guess. So I think this is where it makes more sense.
Yeah. I mean, I hope you get that max out like within a couple months, even years. Like, you seem so dedicated to practicing, and then a side project of yours got carried away. Like, it maybe devotes more time to that project than you want to play Tetris. And I feel like, for me, Tetris, I haven't played Tetris in 2023 at all. Like, I maybe played twice, a 1 hour session twice in 2023. And now I finally moved up my NES setup to the bedroom so I can play a couple of games before bed. And it feels like I can go a bit more relaxed to bed,
Wait, so what's your PB at the moment?
My PB 643, but I'm not sure even because I think I got that PB in 2022 and I honestly have no clue. I think it's 643. Yeah,
but
something like that.
You also have a goal. You have a goal to get a max out, or not?
Yeah. But it's like, when it happens, it happens. Like, my goal currently is like, I want to make content and I want to make the podcast and I want to make social media content and all that. I want to contribute to that instead of playing Tetris. And like, I nearly got through a full year of not playing Tetris while making the podcast, doing commentary on Tetris, and basically do anything in Tetris except playing Tetris.
I see. I mean, maybe I might change my outlook for this as well. I find that it's so hard for me to progress in score that part of me is thinking, I'm just too old. I'm not going to be able to hit that max out anymore, and I should be using my time for something else. And it's like, and in fact, because it's so hard for me to progress, as much as I can say, well, I'm spending too much time on NesTrisChamps instead of practicing. At the end of the day, also, when people ask me for a feature in NesTrisChamps, if I can provide it, I get satisfaction from giving people things that they value. Yeah. And so more satisfaction than me constantly failing at improving or getting a PB,
I don't know. Yesterday I got a 412, 400,000 score on 18 start, and I was very happy about it. I know it's not the best score in the world, but it's like I died immediately after transition. But it's like, okay, for my skill level, I like it, and that's the satisfaction that I get from playing Tetris, and I get the satisfaction from making stuff and provide content for others, like instead of playing Tetris, I guess.
I find with Tetris I have like it's a love-hate relationship. I love playing the game. I think it's rewarding to think about how to best utilize your pieces and play efficiently. But at the level I had in my PBs, okay, every time I play, I should be at least hitting a couple of 500s. Maybe not a lot, but it should be the limit, right? If I play and I don't get any 500, that's ridiculous. And then I can play for 2 hours on some day. I don't even hit a 300, and I'm like, what is this? It's ridiculous. I should just give up. Let me throw everything away. What is this?
When I play Tetris every day, yeah, that was my frustration too. But now I plug in my headphone, I listen to some great music, clear my head, think about stuff, and play Tetris. And that's like, if I get a 400k, get a 400k. If I don't get anything, don't get anything. I honestly don't care.
I actually, talking about headphones, there is one thing that has gone well. I listen to quite a lot of audiobooks, and I find that when you play Tetris, because there is no language involved at all, it's not an RPG, you're not interacting with user or anything like this, it doesn't interact with your language, I don't know, brain places. Yeah. And so if I listen to audiobook while I play Tetris, I can actually pay attention to the book and retain what I'm hearing. Yeah. So it's like sometimes playing Tetris is forcing me to listen to some audiobooks that could be useful for my work or for whatever.
Yeah, I like to listen to podcasts unironically. When I play Tetris, I have a couple of wrestling podcasts and in the Netherlands there's a weekly sport forum, like they recap the week that happens prior to that and for the Dutch sport events and all that. So I like to listen to that, and I really get everything. Like instead of focusing really hard on the game, I just let it flow and get in my zone.
Yeah, I think so. So just for that, I'm gonna just keep it. I remember what was it? Uncle Mike, right? So Anna's uncle. Yeah. I think same thing. He's not. I don't think he's expecting like giant new PBs, but he's an example to live by, right? He doesn't matter. He's quite older than me for sure, and he just plays the game. He enjoys spending time playing the game. This could be how it goes.
Yeah, why not? Yeah, like I said, if I ever get a max out, I get a max out. I hope I get a max out one day, but I'm 27 right now, so I have hopefully a long way to go before.
Yeah. 27, you still have all of your fast reflexes and things like this. I find for me like it gets harder and harder. I get slower, my reflexes get slower. So at some point, I'm like, okay, it's not gonna happen.
Nah, I'm a bad gamer. I like to play casual games. Like I like to play games casually, but I've never been good at games. Like I play them for my enjoyment and not to play them because I'm good at them.
I see.
So cool. How was it to play in the Singapore local events, like the live events that you went to? It was the vibe there, is that completely different compared to CTWC where you attended, or is the vibe the same?
The very first event I attended in Singapore was very professionally set up. So I think there is this group called Retro DNA held by Gerald from Singapore. He collaborated with some folks from Hong Kong, and they managed to collaborate with a local university, which I forgot which one it was. But so the settings was great. There was like this amphitheaters with basically where students attend lecture, but now it was for visitors and viewer of the event.
Yeah.
And it was done like very professionally. His track qualification score, all of that, all in the course of one day with food provided. It was fantastic. Then COVID hit. We'd run one event live in 2021, I think.
Yeah.
We were using NesTrisChamps already at the time, which is pretty good. Then for the past 2 years, Last year, I think the event was set up by Alan, so mostly Alan and Tim Wong. I think they organized this both, and that was very good. But it didn't have the same vibe of professionalism as using like partnering with the university.
Yeah.
But it takes a lot of effort and time to do this. So I'm not blaming them at all. I think they did fantastic. But it was really like particularly us from the community playing together rather than having like random people being interested in the event. It's
Yeah.
very likely that this year is going to be the same again. But yeah, we're a small group of people. We meet each other once in a while. I think, in fact, we might try to meet each other a little bit more often this year
Yeah.
than we did last year. But yeah, so it's very small. In fact, let me think. There used to be a number of very very good player in Singapore, but some of them once they had gotten their max out and very high scores, they just moved on to something else. So
Yeah.
now in Singapore we are we're like maybe 4 or 5, and that's about it.
Yeah. But it's still enough to host a tournament.
Oh yes, definitely. But so like Alan, when we also tournament, like Alan is so much better than all of us that you're like, of course he's gonna win, you know.
Yeah, I know. We have Sidnef, so it's the
Oh yes,
same.
same.
Sidnef played last couple of Benelux Cups, now the classic Tetris Lowlands, but Sidnef played with Das to make it a little bit more even.
I see.
Otherwise, a 2.9 PB compared to whatever Sidnef's PB is currently, compared to a 1.2 for the next, 1.3 for the next one. Yeah, it's unfair. I know, but it's no fault to Sidnef or anything else. But it's like one player so high above the rest.
Yes. No, but it's fine. I think there is really something to say for being in the same room and playing together. It's really nice to have these live events.
Yeah.
So we'll continue.
If there are more events like in Asia and close to Singapore, are you willing to travel to them, or are you like, no, I'll stick to Singapore and maybe once in a while fly to the US for CTWC?
I mean, so CTWC has the biggest reputation, right? So that was like really a live bucket listing, now I did it last year.
Yeah.
No, I think if there was other event in Asia, whether it be all the way from, I don't know, Hong Kong or Thailand or Indonesia or whatever, I'd probably go if I can afford the time and if I have the leaves.
Yeah.
Because like in Asia, there is a lot of budget airline. It's not difficult to take a flight somewhere and attend something. I think it'd be fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think I've seen this before, or maybe I'm not in the right communities. Not sure.
Do you feel like that Tetris is more like a European/American game and that Asia is left out in anything? Like most of the events are late night for European, early in the nights for the US or like American folks, and Asia has to play very late or very early to compromise for that.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, that's been my experience so far. When I go to Twitch and go to the Tetris category or classic Tetris category, if I go during daytime in Singapore, there's like nobody online basically.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's always either at night or very early, which makes it very difficult and challenging. But I mean, last year, so if going to the US is really the toughest. But I did consider going to CTWC DAS since this is being held in Germany.
Yeah.
And I figured that I might try to go if the timing is good. I think there are some period where I cannot go. Like there is some months because of the way my work is structured and the schedule that we have on the year. I just cannot leave the country, and this year was one of them. I think I forgot when CTWC DAS was, but I know I could not leave work. That was not possible.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they are trying to host late August this year.
Late August might work. I'd
Might
have
work.
to check.
My last question for you before I let you go, because it's very fun talk, but what is your goal? Like, do you want to get the max out in 2024, or do you like, okay, I'm pushing as hard as I can and hopefully get a new PP, maybe get very close to a max out, or do you have other goals Tetris related in mind?
So, if I could get a max out in 2024, that'd be fantastic. But did I put this as a goal? No, because part of me thinks it's just not gonna happen. So at least getting PBs, I think, would be great. So getting a PB would be fantastic. It's been a long, long while since I had a PB. Initially, one thing I was doing was the CTWC qualification. Like, so that was my yearly check-in. But basically what I was saying is every time I run for CTWC qualification, whether it's online or not online, I should have a higher score than the year before. And I think so far the past 2 years I did manage to do this. Like the very first time for the online CTWC, I got 512, I think, of qualification. This year it was like 572 or something like this. So it's been working, and so at the very least I should make sure that I can be consistent enough to get maybe a 600 by the time CWC runs. I mean, I'm not even going to be there for qualification, but I can make it a point to say, look, on the day of qualification, CTWC day 1, I need to get a 600 that day. If I don't have it, that's a fail.
That's a lot of pressure.
Yes. But yeah, so that would be it.
And for NesTrisChamps, do you hope that the growth will be as it is as it was in 2023, or do you hope that the growth will stagger a little bit?
I mean, I don't know. Like I said, I don't have a lot of expectation for NesTrisChamps. If people use it and they do have requirements that they wish to see in the system, or like they have feedback and it's reasonably understandable and it makes sense, then I mean I'll just keep improving it for people to use. And if some people like help me or contribute to it, that'd be fantastic. Or let's say if whatever I have, if we can contribute it to other system, that would be okay also.
Yobi, thanks so much for joining me here on the Peace Dependency podcast. It was a very pleasant interview and I really liked it. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, SirMaser. You have a good evening. Thanks for having me.
With that all being said, this is the end of the Peace Dependency podcast. Thanks so much for listening. Follow us on the socials at Peace Dependency Podcast and have a great Tetris month. And I'll see you all in March. Bye.